Right, a really warm welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us for today's session. It's Retail Digital Transformation Roadmap, leveraging 3D design and the voice of the customer for speed to market and product success. That's a long title. Hello again, I'm Heather Thorpe, I'm from Just Style. So moving on to today's presentation, the agenda for today is on your screens right now, and includes presentations from our experts, plus the live Q&A session at the end. I'll just start us off with a very brief introduction to the speakers for today. So today we have three very experienced speakers at the helm, and they are Lena Lim. Lena is the Chief Commercial Officer at 3D apparel solutions provider Browzwear. We also have Gretchen Jezerc. Gretchen is the SVP of Marketing at voice of the customer solution providers First Insight. And last but not least, we have Will Yester, who is the Senior Manager at global consulting firm Calypso. So without further ado, let me pass you to Will, who will begin today's event.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Heather, and thanks to everyone who's attending today live and on the recorded broadcast of this. As Heather said, I'm Will Yester. I'm a Senior Manager with Calypso in our retail and consumer practice. I'm going to kick off today's webinar with a little bit of table setting on why we're here, the opportunities that we all know are out there in the digital technology space, and discuss some of the things that we're hearing in the industry as consultants. But first, I want to introduce Calypso. Calypso is a 14-year-old management consulting firm that's exclusively focused on innovation and product development, serving clients in the retail and consumer, industrial, high-tech, and life sciences industries. Within our focus on product creation, we have a comprehensive set of capabilities that include strategy, operations, technology, and digital services. We're typically brought in by clients who are looking to improve or build new capabilities that will make their product development and commercialization efforts faster and more efficient, and with the ability to deliver improved results in the marketplace with their consumers. For many years, from a technology perspective, that meant PLM, at least in this industry. We have a deep history there and deep experience with many of the vendors and players there. However, in the last 5 years, more and more technology and retail has meant digital. It has meant new digital capabilities and technologies that are coming in. So we began helping clients with a new suite of services focused on digital. So some examples are there at the bottom: how you can build a business case to launch a digital program, how you can use advanced analytics like voice of customer to make better decisions on your products and product lines, how to create a connected 3D product creation pipeline for your 3D digital product creation efforts, and how to structure a transformation program that will gain adoption in your organization. Just a few examples of the consulting work that we do in this space with our partners, Browzwear and First Insight. The challenges in retail haven't changed substantially, but what has changed is an increase in new technologies and an increase in disruptive entrants that has created more opportunities and more impetus for retailers to consider a shift towards digital. Got a few examples of the challenges listed here on the screen. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but includes things like how do you get your team to actually sell more of the things that your team spends time creating, how to improve those development ratios, how do you reduce the high sample costs and the high cost of in-store testing, how to improve pricing accuracy, reducing markdowns, and perhaps most critically, and the one that at least we hear most often, a need for speed. How do we reduce our long cycle times? How do we create, reduce a long creation calendar? I think our clients know, and probably many of you on the call know, that the retail and apparel process today is fairly long. It's highly analog. It's fairly disconnected in terms of the assets that you're using and that you're handing off from one group to the next. And it's linear. We're basically going from one function to the next through a series of handoffs. So I think the opportunity that we see and that many of our partners see is to transform and use digital tools to transform into a leaner, faster, more collaborative workplace that can substantially reduce that time to market. As I mentioned in my intro, about 4 or 5 years ago, the shift in retail really became away from traditional PLM technologies and with a heavier appetite for digital technologies. And as we saw that, we wanted to learn more and wanted to kick off some research in the area. Digital used to be reserved for customer experience people, store innovation people, marketing, omni-channel. That was really the shift that we saw, is that digital actually began to mean something for product development teams, design, development, sourcing, manufacturing. And those groups started to get excited about what they were seeing in terms of digital tools. The vendors landscape began to flourish. We saw many new entrants that rose up to meet some of that demand. So to learn more, we started a research effort within the university and PI Apparel to understand how product development leaders were planning their digital transformations, how they were prioritizing different technologies that were available to them. We've recently completed the 3rd year of this survey and want to share some of the results during this presentation. This chart just summarizes a profile of the respondents. As you can see, we've got a mix of different size companies, mostly the majority large, over $1 billion, some over $10 billion. In terms of company type, we've got a good mix of respondents who are private retailers with a private brand, about 20% that are vertically integrated retailers, and about 1/3 that are brand apparel footwear manufacturers. And in terms of revenue percent of own brand, big majority, looks like about 81%, that have a higher than 50% of their revenue from their own brand, with about 10% with a fairly small percentage more traditional retailer. That's who responded, and as I mentioned, these are all people in product development. So this is not people who are in marketing. This is not people who are in omni-channel. That digital means a little bit something different to many of those folks. This is a really product development, design and development focused group. So to get the conversation started with Lena and Gretchen, I wanted to kick off with this initial insight, and then we've got a few more survey results later in the presentation. We ask this question every year: which technologies are important to your business, and when do you plan to invest in those technologies? And this year, the overwhelming winner within digital product creation was 3D design and development tools. And within advanced analytics, the overwhelming winner was voice of customer applications like First Insight. So as you can see, a high percentage of respondents, 84% and 81% respectively, I think that these technologies are important to their business, and a high percentage, a little bit more so in 3D design tools, are either investing now or plan to invest on this technology in the next 12 months. Given that these are the 2 leading technologies, 3D design tools and voice of customer, that organizations like you are using and experimenting with today, Lena, Gretchen, and I plan to present our point of view about how these 2 technologies are stronger together, can drive more benefits when used together, that will help you get your business case started, get your justification over the top, so that you can begin scaling some of these capabilities to the rest of your business. So that'll be what we'll present later in the presentation, but for right now, I want to hand over to Lena and let her provide a little background on Browzwear and where she sees the industry going.
Okay, thank you very much, Will, and thank you everybody for attending the session today. So as I share a little bit about Browzwear, I just want to share today's presentation starting with Browzwear's view of really what Fashion 2020 means. And it's important. In the survey earlier on, you saw the Calypso saying that in their survey, 3D came in overwhelmingly to be the one thing that everybody has to do. And even in speaking to many of our clients, and some of them are on the call today as well, we realize that yes, it is extremely important to be more efficient in our product creation and design processes, but as an overall, what is it that's going to help us as a company, and as not us Browzwear, but as the industry and your companies really thrive in the digital age that we are living in today. And I think this is the one view that I want to focus on in my presentation today. Some of you are on the call that may have, sorry? Thought I heard an interruption. Some of you may have been on the call, are aware of who Browzwear is. And so the presentation that I'm taking through today may be new for some of you, but may not be for others. So bear with me. So let me start by speaking really about Browzwear. Browzwear has been in the market for 18 years. So I know that some of you have heard, the terminology on 3D being called true to life. And really, why true to life for Browzwear? We were driven to our destiny 18 years ago when we believed that everybody will be buying online. And therefore, we need to provide that platform for people when they buy online to be doing virtual try-on so that the confidence in buying online can increase and also the returns can be eliminated or reduced drastically. Now, this is 18 years ago. Many of your mobile phone today is actually more powerful than a computer at that time. That being said, as we look on, as the internet then busted sometime, around the late 1990s, but the technology, because it was not built on a gaming engine, but really on true to life simulation, it attracted companies like early companies, adopters of technology like Nike and Adidas, who really saw the technology as solving another problem, which was the issue of a long calendar time because of excessive sampling and excessive iteration. Now, when they saw this technology, they didn't see it for the internet buying, but they saw the technology that we built on being something that they could trust for the virtual prototyping space. Fast forward, 12, 15 years down the road right now, in the last 6 years, Browzwear is no longer just about virtual prototyping, because the industry has come to realize that virtual prototyping is one issue, but much more than that is pushing us to really resolve the workflow element of a digital workflow, starting with 3D design, 3D development, 3D, how do we sell, and so on and so on. And as we move on, our technology platform was completely overhauled, because clearly we are serving an industry that has both the creative and the technical mind. So anyone on this call who is a designer know that without a Mac, I am not a designer. So even putting our platform and technology on cross-platform on Mac and PC OS was important. And then also understanding the integration to tools that are commonly used in our industry, whether it's a 2D CAD tool or an Adobe tool, Illustrator, that was important. Further on, as we built that workflow, Browzwear took the decision of one key element, and today it still makes us unique, that is keeping our platform open in our architecture, so that we can allow other fashion tech companies like First Insights today, and also many other companies to connect to Browzwear using APIs or some level of human readable format. And so this is why we are able to achieve what I spoke about earlier on, Fashion 2020. So what is Fashion 2020? And that is not too far away. Fashion 2020 means that you are living in a world where you are designing and creating products not on forecasting, not on WJSN report that could be 3 years ahead, but you are looking forward most likely and designing based and responding based on trend analytics. Consumer like you and I are sitting in front of our computers, or more likely on our mobile phones, and clicking away on things that we like, we don't like, on whether it's on shopping, e-commerce website or somewhere. But each time that you and I are clicking, we are actually giving the internet a lot of information, and technology out there provided by companies like First Insight, whom you will be hearing from shortly, are out there harnessing a lot of this information that is for voice of the customer, and bringing this back inward to you even as you start product development and so forth, so that you're no longer guessing and forecasting, but you're actually trending and or adapting to trends that is out there. So once you know what is trending in colors and silhouette, then what can you do next? Which is the idea around using machine learning and in order to automate a lot of those designs that you are seeing. Today, this allows you to remove the routine out of some of the work that designers are doing, like colorways and so forth, so that they can actually focus on real creativity. So this allows now an opportunity for machine learning and actually humans to be working side by side, freeing really the human creativity to be doing something that is much more important for our brands and for the consumer alike. So next part of it, as we finish doing all of this trending and creating all these assets, what are the next thing that we do is that we will plonk this digital asset that we have created. Now, remember that everything that you see here is in this presentation will be in 3D. And now we are taking this 3D garment that has been created, we're putting them on the virtual online store and or your e-commerce site, and we are going to be selling them. You have your insights, your test insights that will be coming from First Insights, trend analytics, and now you know what are the things that are likely to sell and not sell. Now, by putting that image up on a virtual try-on and or your e-commerce, remember that you're still not making that product yet. You are still creating that digitally, you're putting that online, and once the consumer clicks a buy, then what happens is that you are now able to move this entire 3D file in the intelligent way into speed manufacturing. Whether speed manufacturing for you means it is fully automated or it is some level of onshoring with automation being done, this 3D file, unlike an Illustrator sketch, actually provides the full information to go into manufacturing, whether it is your pattern, whether it's your color information, whether it's your fabric information, seam information, and so on, that allows you now to transfer this smart tech pack into the manufacturing. Your manufacturing partners on location and or overseas are taking this file, and now they're able to create this and be able to ship that very quickly outwards. So what then is important to drive this future that you see of Fashion 2020, which is really not that far away? Browzwear believes that firstly, you must have the true to life virtual garment, which means that it not only has to look great, but the virtual and the physical must be a twin of each other, because you don't want to be selling an image that looks different and for the consumer to be receiving something that looks different. And this digital and physical twin to each other is extremely important. The next part that is also important as an organization when you look into digital workflow is how can I scale, how can I automate in our platform to bring in other means of using the virtual garment that has been created, but also the next page speaks about data, the ability now to take this information, because it's scaling, that you can take the data that is coming from, firstly, your sourcing, moving that into the 3D space, getting that into your customer portal, but also bringing this customer portal information like returns, sales, information on grading, on what sizes sold and did not sell, what sizes were returned and so forth, back into your creation portal for you to be able to analyze and close the loop between what sells, also what you should be making. Now, this is a very powerful tool to this, and at the heart of enabling this from sourcing right down to selling and this connectivity really is the 3D garment that you see. So when you see this happening, what we're really driving here is a shift in a paradigm shift. a paradigm. What do I mean by a paradigm shift? In this case, that is the importance of looking at a business model where today we are designing, make, and we're hoping to sell. And we know why we are hoping to sell, because we see sale everywhere, to an environment where we can now design and test, sell, and then we make. Just this paradigm shift itself makes it fundamentally a change to resolving a lot of the supply chain issues that you might have, allowing many other benefits, which we will talk about later on. So I hope that this kind of gives you an idea of this, of where we see Fashion 2020 and why, in collaborating with companies like First Insight and also digitalization success partners like Calypso, is bringing that knowledge as well as that change to the marketplace. So without much delay, I will now introduce Gretchen from First Insight to speak about what is trending and how does First Insight technology solve that problem.
Thank you very much, Lena, and thanks all for joining today's webinar. So we're very excited about the synergies between 3D product design and voice of the customer testing that can really help to make that paradigm shift that Lena just mentioned into a reality. Let's talk first a little bit about First Insight, since it could be that some of you are not yet familiar with our company and our solution. We're a cloud-based software as a solution company and are the world's leading platform for new product consumer testing, helping retailers and brands worldwide to test their new products with consumers online before they take them to market. These companies use the test results then, as you see here, to help them make better product selection, pricing, marketing, and planning decisions. We also have an optimized line planning solution that's empowered through machine learning, and could talk more about that on a separate webinar in a future date. So to talk a little bit about our history and where we come from, First Insight was founded in 2007, and we're now active in about 30 different countries, able to test in 14 different languages and currencies. And we're testing products ranging from jewelry to apparel to footwear to sporting goods, and now even furniture, consumer packaged goods, and home products like faucets and shower heads. So quite a broad range of products that we're testing. And we started off in developing our solution back in the 2007 to 2010 time range, then launched the solutions for product selection, pricing, and targeting, then expanded pretty significantly globally starting around the 2013 timeframe. And then in 2014-15, one of our steps forward was an integration with PTC Flex PLM to be able to pull the information that's needed from a PLM system into our platform for product testing, and then port those results back into the PLM system. So that's an example of the kind of digitalization of our workflows and processes that can really help to gain some synergies as we move forward and try and become always more efficient in what we do as an industry. Then moving forward from there, we launched the optimized line planning solution that I mentioned earlier, and also our offerings for smaller companies in the 2016-17 timeframe. And then have launched ElastiCast, which I'll talk about later. It's a new pricing capability, and are preparing to launch planning solutions later this year. So as we've grown, we're now serving over 100 retailers and brands worldwide. So the First Insight approach is essentially fairly straightforward. We work with companies to understand what question is it that you're trying to answer with this specific set of tests. Then identify the items to be tested, engage with consumers online, and so this is done via email or also sometimes through social media outreach to consumers. We then get their feedback on products in ways that I'll explain in a couple of minutes, apply our proprietary algorithms, and then share the insights back to our customers. And all of this is done very quickly, certainly within 24 to 48 hours, and often much faster than that, because the reports are generated in the portal automatically once we've received enough respondents to close out the test, and that often happens within a few hours. So this supports this need for speed that we are constantly hearing and talking about in retail today. So the first step is to engage with consumers, and it's generally the case that our customers send an email, so it looks like it's coming from Dick's Sporting Goods or another of our customers to members of their CRM database. We're also able to source third-party respondents in the case where our customers don't have a CRM database or would like to be speaking with new groups of consumers, perhaps about new offerings or their interest in expanding their addressable market. And this can be then answered or played through either on a desktop laptop or on a mobile device. We optimize for mobile because at least 70% of respondents now are playing through this game on their mobile devices. So then a consumer sees something like this for each one of the products to be tested. So, one thing I'd really like to point out here is that while this probably looks a lot like a woman wearing a dress and a live photograph of her, this is in fact a composed rendering from Browzwear that has placed this 3D image of the dress on a very, very lifelike model. And so this is really exciting to be able to test early in the new product development process because of the availability of these high quality images. And it's also possible, as you saw in Lena's presentation earlier, to be able to rotate these images and have it really be very 3D in how it's perceived by the consumer. So that enables very accurate testing to be done because the consumer can get a really good feel for what this product is like. And so we collect a few key pieces of input about each product that's tested. One is, what do you think people would pay for this? And so that's where you see what would they pay in the middle. And then what do you think of it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Or somewhere in between? And then on the next slide, we see that there's also the opportunity for consumers to give verbatim comments about the product. These are very, very sought after by and helpful to designers in particular, because they love to understand why a product is testing maybe more positively or less positively than they thought it would. And so they can get direct feedback from consumers in this way. So next, we take that pricing input and sentiment input, and we process it through our proprietary algorithm, our analytics engine. And this makes use of some reference items that are items for which we do know the sales history. So these are existing items, not brand new products. And we use those to weight and filter the responses of all the respondents accordingly. So respondents who get it and can identify high performers versus low performers in how they answer, we will weight their answers more heavily than someone else who does not identify those properly. So the outcome is a value score for each item. And this value score ranges from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best. And we have found across time, across geographies, and across product categories that this value score is in fact predictive of an item's future performance once it goes to market. So our customers tend to try to launch products focus their inventory investments and their development efforts on products that get a result of approximately a 7 or above. Those dramatically outperform 1s through 3s and also outperform the more neutral zone products of 4s through 6s. So now to shift gears to what one of our customers would see, this is an example of a results screen for the set of dresses. So as we see, these products have value scores ranging from a 10 down to a 3. The product that received a 10 got that rating for a number of reasons. One is that the model price, which is our prediction of the average unit retail price across the life cycle of the product, is actually higher than the test price, which is essentially the company's planned initial price for this product. The other thing that we see is that there's a much higher percentage of positive sentiment, love it or like it, versus negative sentiment on the product. So all those things taken together yield a high value score for this item when the responses were put through our predictive algorithm. You can see the inverse is the case for the product at the bottom that has received a 3. In addition, we all know that every product has its price, and even a product that people say they like very much will not be a success in the market if it's set at the wrong price, a price that's too high. In addition, we find through our testing that anywhere between 6 and about 11 or 12% of products are launched at prices that were lower than what the market could have borne. And so retailers and brands are, on an ongoing basis, losing out on that incremental revenue and margin, also driving early stockouts by pricing products lower than they needed to. So the new ElastiCast capability, which we launched earlier this year, enables retailers and brands to see the impact of their pricing decisions on sell-through at initial price, as well as across their own markdown cadence. And this really enables them to set their prices much more intelligently. So essentially, I hope that this has helped you to start putting a picture together in your minds about how the 3D design capabilities from Browzwear and the voice of the customer testing from First Insight are really making us stronger together. Testing early in the new product development process, companies can really make this paradigm shift a reality. And this is the power of this digital transformation that we're talking about. So armed with real actionable data about which products will win, with which target customers at which prices, they can then move from this design and test phase to the sell phase and then to production with more confidence than they could in the past.
Thanks, Gretchen, and thanks, Lena. So I think you can all see how Browzwear and First Insight, even on their own, can help us to get towards that paradigm shift that they both talked about. But I think the reality is that that's a ways off for most of you. And I think we want to talk a little bit, transition into what the journey is looking like, where companies are getting stuck, and then how we can use Browzwear and First Insight together to get over some of the potential barriers. The slide here is a summary of a digital journey that's broken into 5 steps of adoption. The first 3 may look familiar to you, and many of you have probably gone through all or several of those steps. Curating, you're all essentially curating today by attending a webinar, by attending conferences, by exploring new technologies and understanding what's out there from a digital point of view. Crafting a vision would be really aligning on a value proposition for your company and understanding how digital can help. And prototyping and trial, most of you are likely doing that with one or several of these solutions as well, actually setting up strategic experiments, prototypes, proof of concepts, typically in small pockets of the organization with a limited scope. And often those first 3 steps sort of inform each other. You almost do a loop of prototyping, curation, and vision. And I think what we're seeing is that many organizations are really spinning on those first three and struggling with how to get over that barrier into a business justification or a business case, and then obviously the adoption and scaling that you need to be able to realize the paradigm shift that we've been talking about. So to bring back some more survey results, we ask companies really where their barriers are for digital, and have a few ideas that we want to share with you. First of all, funding is obviously a big one. 54%, so more than half of product leaders must seek new funding, and we know how difficult new funding is to get versus being able to include in an existing budget. That number is actually down. It used to be higher in our previous version, so that's good news that it is moving in the right direction. But still, more than half of the folks we talk to are trying to find or trying to justify a totally new program in the organization, which is challenging. 91%, so a big majority, acknowledge that this is going to require redesigning processes. I think you just saw through both presentations that in order to realize the paradigm shift, we're going to have to change the way that we do things, how we make decisions. So I think companies realize that, and they know that it's a challenge to be able to do that complex, detailed, time-consuming work of designing new processes while you're also having to hit the mark, see them, oversee them in developing new products. Within DPC, 75% said changing culture and processes is a significant barrier, and a little bit less so for advanced analytics. The problem there more being trust in the data. One bit of good news, or a little maybe mixed news, is sponsorship is no longer an obstacle. I think as we've asked this the last few years, this number has gone up in terms of sponsorship not being a barrier. We see about 3 out of 4 companies in both advanced analytics and DPC say we can find a sponsor for these initiatives. I think the challenge and the interesting thing is that sponsorship, when we ask who sponsors these programs, is really fragmented across a bunch of different leaders. And most typically, it could be CEO-led, it could be a technology-led focus out of the CIO's office, it could be supply chain, it could be a VP of product development or brand leaders. So that sort of fragmented sponsorship it often makes it difficult since all those leaders have different motivations, different incentives. We often don't see sponsorship really at that CEO level or sponsorship that spans across the whole life cycle, which is often needed. If you think about DPC and voice of customer, we know many clients who use both Browzwear and First Insight, and many of them use them within their same company and have no idea that the program is going on in another part of the organization, since they're often being led by different executives. So I think that's the barriers that we're trying to break down. And what we're going to do now is transition into a little bit of a case study and talk about how tactically you should go about pulling together these two really important capabilities and actually get through your business justification so that you can begin scaling and realize that paradigm shift. So we'll talk a little bit about a hypothetical case study, and I'm going to just talk about what you need to set it up. I mean, I think first and foremost, you've got to have a cross-functional view, and you've got to have a little bit of a vision map, as I mentioned, and it's got to be cross-functional, including product creation, merchandising, sales, manufacturing. Really, everyone who's got a stake in digital needs to be at the table so you can see the different initiatives going on and understand how things will work together. In digital product creation in particular, we know that there's great applications for digital assets, both in design and development, as Lena talked about, but in manufacturing, where she talked about speed manufacturing, as well as using it directly with consumers through digital sales tools. In order to really have that end-to-end vision, you've got to have a vision map that is cross-functional, includes all those different organizations. So having some kind of roadmap for how these things are going to come together and having a set of objectives that your executive team agrees with is really critical. And then when you think about digital creation specifically, really important to manage that portfolio of cross-functional initiatives, to identify some of those synergistic combinations like digital product creation and voice of customer, and to provide cross-functional metrics and insights that will improve value and increase chances of funding, right? So we've got a complex stakeholder group. So we've got, we can't just be focused on sampling, for instance, which is, a really common way that groups try to justify a digital product creation investment. We've got to look at multiple ways that this technology is going to provide benefit. In order to do that, we have to expand our scope a bit. So assuming you've decided we're going to do digital product creation, we're going to do 3D design, we're going to do voice of customer, there's a little bit of basics that you have to do in order to make sure that you're set up for success. And defining use cases and process workflows, and we talked about how everyone agrees that we're going to have to change processes. Even for a test or a proof of concept, it's important to do that. And it'll be really important if we're successful and we're able to scale this into different parts of the business. So coming up with some of those basics around what are the use cases, what's the process flow for how this is going to work in a new world, and being able to sort of validate that as we do our experiment. And another key point is to set up your metrics and target values. As I said, make sure that they're cross-functional, shipping samples, improvement to gross margin. We want to understand what the organization's baseline is, where are we now for a certain brand or product category, and then what's our target for improvement as we look at doing an experiment that includes 3D design and voice of customer. So with all that sort of set up, in order to get a successful program off the ground, I think we really need those things. And then Lena will talk about now that you've got that set up, how to actually start designing in 3D and creating assets.
So I'm going to jump in a little bit quickly here. Here you see that, how would a design and a development team work together? Assuming that your company has blocks and so on, designers would actually be able to use the 3D tool itself, and you can see our designer has used a pen and drawn a new design line on the sleeve. It's mirroring over the other side. The ability now to use, to be able to change color, add fabric details physically as well as on the colors itself, be able to place all different types of logos all over print, right? And at any time that you are working on this, the information is sending itself also back to the adjustment on the pattern, so that manufacturing knows this. Now, when this design is to be developed, this can then go into pattern makers, where they are, or if a senior designer wants to do a lot more constructions on it, they can by changing construction, adding new construction like a puffy on this jacket, for example, and then going ahead and looking at how and what other construction changes that can be made. In this case, these two pieces of patterns can be merged very quickly at a click of a button. A new piece is created, and now the pieces can be placed on the body itself and then stitched and sewn in the 3D window, so that we can very quickly visualize what that would do. The Browzwear tool also has a direct integration into Adobe Illustrator, where your graphics designer, your print designers can actually go in, work in that native Illustrator environment, do a complete save, and then bring this out without having to import and export. It's an automatic update of it. No longer is a designer limited to just designing on a steel body, but you could also have the designer look at that design that they have done, even as the body is in motion. This is not animation, this is a pose to pose, so that we can actually check how the garment would actually dress and fit even as it has gone into motion. And once we know that the sleeve is too short, somebody from the development team can go ahead and just say, we want it longer, so I'm just going to go ahead and change. Now you see this changes that is happening real time on the computer screen itself, whereas all of these changes at some point in time would have taken weeks of sampling, going back and forth between a factory and or a sample room and yourselves. But today, with the power of also the software tool and the cloud collaboration ability, by sending this on the cloud, you are telling somebody straight away that, hey, I have an issue, this is style zone that you are watching, right now, and could you just change, maybe add a different logo, add a different color, and you are communicating within this chat box itself, pretty much like, you know, what you would do on a Pinterest page, for example. Once this is done, it automatically exports everything here into a tech pack that you can now send into manufacturing. Remember, I talked about removing the routine work away from designer. This is another example of doing that. So over to you.
Once we have those 3D assets, really just sort of demonstrated how we can show, we can put those in the First Insight. Go ahead, Gretchen.
Great, thank you. So you know, once we have these images, then you know, we're able to again select the items that we want to test, you know, develop the test. And one item that we didn't speak about earlier is that there is the opportunity to ask survey questions at the beginning of each of these engagements to get a better understanding of the respondent population and be able to segment the responses later. So that's something that's very powerful for example, wholesale companies who would be interested in knowing what people who buy their dresses at Nordstrom's versus Kohl's versus Target might think of a certain style. And so once we have that all set up and have tested or picked the products that we want to test, then we can finalize this deployment plan for the testing. And then again, once the products have been tested, we receive our results on them in the form of information that can empower decisions to pick the right products, how we want to price them, and how we would target, market, and plan them. What you're seeing in the lower image there with the curve, that's actually the shape of the demand for a given product across a variety of price points. And you're seeing, in this case, this model price is the predicted average unit retail or average selling price, and the test price is, in fact, their planned initial ticket price.
Great. With that input from First Insight, you've got a really powerful set of tools that justifies new benefits that can go straight into your business case. So as I mentioned, getting that justification bought in by executives is really an area that the companies are struggling. They're struggling to make that case for 3D based purely on sample reductions and photo reductions. So I think what the combination of First Insight and 3D gives you is the ability to claim further benefits, sales gains from a better DTC experience, margin boost from better pricing and from fewer markdowns, benefits that you will have quantifiable data on from your own product line from First Insight that you can put into your business case and have some really firm justification to executives and to multiple executives on your team, not just product development, but this is a real benefit. You know, the final step is really, you know, process work is an important part of this. So to capture some of the implications from your tests, to adjust your use cases and your process flows so that this can be used again or expanded to a different product category or a different brand. Those would be really your next steps from a process and org point of view, so that you can continue to become a learning organization and learn from your first attempt at combining Browzwear and First Insight.
So Will has kind of outlined earlier on. I think I'm just going to speak about this from a pictorial point of view. Today in our industry, we are facing this, you know, the digital natives coming into our industry and then, you know, giving us all this pressure. We are really in this red ocean situation where it's like a lot of sharks are around, and we as an industry are trying to move towards where that blue ocean might be. When we look at 3D, many companies would tell us that it is all about, you know, saving samples and it's about reducing lead time. I encourage everyone here to really think about this. Those elimination of samples, unwanted samples, really, the wasted sample, and the reduction of your overall lead time is proven time and time again. It will come as a result of just increasing the efficiency and the agility of your business processes and your workflow. What is important to look at is, with this increased agility, with this increased ability of being able to move faster, allowing us to make that paradigm shift of being able to design, test before we sell and make, how does that really impact our brand value? The ability to do more accurate product offering means that we likely have to mark down less, means that our overall profit margins, product contribution actually increases. And this overall means that as a company, not only do you sell more, but the brand value actually goes up. So this is our take together with First Insight, Calypso, and Browzwear for why 3D and really the importance of digitalization for our industry today.
In terms of your next step coming out of today's webinar, I think the first is really to start that cross-functional conversation. Get together your product design development leaders who may be focused on 3D with your line management, merchandising, and sales leaders who may already be using First Insight, or at least to educate them of the opportunity to use First Insight to test voice of the customer. And then, bring in the three of us. Certainly Calypso's, our role in this is typically to help drive that cross-functional conversation, to help drive some of those foundational tools and processes that you need to make this work to scale it to your organization.
And as we saw from Will's survey data earlier, the industry is recognizing the importance of listening to the voice of the customer, particularly as Lena just mentioned, the digital natives have an unprecedented access to information about products, and trends and preferences are changing faster than ever. Certainly many of the younger generation want to have a new outfit that's the hottest new thing every time they take a new Instagram photo. So we need to stay ahead of that, and one of the tools is in fact listening to that voice of the customer in real time and being informed by that. And that's empowered even further when you leverage 3D images to be able to do that testing earlier in the new product creation process.
So as your next step, I think Will and also Gretchen has said much. I think from our side, from Browzwear, start looking at your digital workflow. Start looking at your workflow and thinking about how do you transition to this digital workflow. There are many practitioners out there who are willing to share, and a lot of cross-industry sharing as well. So take the most of it and just take the plunge and just get started, because it's more important that we start making that change rather than thinking about why not to change. So thank you very much for your time. And now I think we do a question and answer, Heather.
We do. We have questions. So thank you to all of you for your great presentations there. It's really interesting. It's getting a lot of love, I notice. So first of all, we have a couple of questions. The first one I think I'd like to put both to Lena and to Gretchen. What do you see as the largest barriers to realisation of this joint vision?
So I could speak to that to start with. In our case, the key users of our solution tend to be merchants, designers, product managers, and frankly, they're not used to having this kind of information. They're often relying on their gut and intuition combined with historical performance of similar products, and so they need to adjust their decision processes and their ways of working in order to actually be able to leverage and use these pieces of information. Another key point is that it's fairly often the case that photos of new products are not available early enough in the process to be able to do the testing and use the test results to inform decisions. That's actually something similar to what Lena was mentioning about moving this non-value added work off of the plates of merchants and other product owners can be in the form of implementing 3D, because if you've got 3D images, you have those earlier in your process, and you have images that are of a high enough quality for sure to be doing your testing.
Yeah, I think Gretchen has covered pretty much all of this. I think that the greatest barrier most of the time is within the organization itself. People are working in a very silos mode, and one does not know what the other is doing. A joint vision requires the organization to come together to understand we as an organization are going into digitalization, and it is not just a department in sales doing it, or separate to what design and development are doing. It is a workflow, which means it is about collaborating and coming together as an organization.
Great, thanks for that, Lena and Gretchen, both of you. That was great. Okay, this is interesting. Is 3D fashion design SW a requirement in the curriculum of all fashion design schools?
I would love to say that it is a requirement, but at this moment in time, I can say that many schools are starting to pick up the importance of looking at how would 3D software aid a curriculum of pattern making. How would it be applied to designing? How would it apply to the merchandising? So, because at the end of the day, it is a tool, but the tool can be applied, as you saw earlier on, very quickly through the videos, into many aspects of an apparel creation and design. So what we have seen from schools like FIT, OSU, or the Oregon State Universities, and UNCG and so forth, is that those are the schools that are more progressive in taking that software and then applying that into the different curriculum. This is happening, and the trend is increasing.
What about you, Gretchen? Have you got any comments on the school?
Yeah. So, thank you, Heather. Interestingly, like Lena, I would love to say that the First Insight solution was incorporated into all these programs as well. That's not yet the case, but I am happy to report that the Fashion Institute of Technology, FIT, in New York implemented a course this past semester based on teaching the First Insight solution, with a goal of arming their graduates with the tools that they need to be able to really make good design and buying decisions in their future careers. And they're continuing with this course, and in fact are adding additional sections going forward. So it's our hope that this will be something that will expand across other universities as well.
Yeah, and one quick point also from Browzwear is that Browzwear actively seeks also a lot of education partnerships. So if there is anyone on this call who are coming from that, please do not hesitate to reach out to us.
Yeah, same here.
Excellent. Gretchen, while there, can I ask you this question as well? Can you tell me, what difference would 3D imagery make to the accuracy of FI testing?
So that's a great question. So a couple of things. First of all, we are able to test all across the new product development process, starting even with CADs, or sketches. We do see the trend in terms of the rank order of products staying consistent across that life cycle, but there is often a slightly lower level of value scores early on with, say, a sketch, because it's difficult for customers to visualize what that final product will really look like. Now, once it comes to 3D images versus actual photos, we've tested head-to-head with both, and have actually seen the same results, meaning that use of a 3D image does not degrade the accuracy of the testing in any way, which is fantastic, because that makes it possible to test earlier in the process with an image that really looks very much like a final product.
Fantastic. That makes total sense. Okay, moving on. We haven't got a lot of time, but I'll ask one more question, I think. You mentioned that designers can be hesitant to try new ways of working. So how do you overcome that?
When we look at designers, I think that most designers are firstly not hesitant to trying something new. I think the issue much more is also the time that is allocated to them to be picking up something new. When you look at a designer's work today on the same computer screen, he or she is looking at the current season. By 2 hours later, he is iterating for the previous season, and he's trying to do things about 3 or 4 seasons all in a day. And there is never time for him or her to be really looking at what would it take for me to just step out and to do this successfully. Companies that have been successful in driving their designers had been looking at a few things. Number one, making time for them to be doing so. Number two, making sure that there is a digitalization library for them, fabrics, trims, and so forth, which is easy to do, but it still has to be there for them. Thirdly, also making sure that they understand that the designer that is part of a digitalization strategy, ensuring that he or she has some level of trade-off. It's not so much that I want you to do 3D, but I want you to continue doing everything that you do today. But really understanding that as we move towards a new digital workflow, things changes, it becomes more collaborative, and it's not so much a linear handoff. So when we have found that designers are open, when they understand that they are really a part of that bigger change, it has never been that they are hesitant or resistant towards it. Time must be given, and that bigger understanding of what would it take, and also their involvement right from the start in creating this digital workflow has been critical for why some companies have succeeded and others are still trying to convince them.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate that. Thanks, Lena. Okay, well, I think we've come to the end of today's presentation. Thank you so much for everybody who's joined us today. It's been a great turnout. I really appreciate it. And some people from crazy times all over the world as well. So thank you if you've got up at an ungodly hour of the day. As I said earlier, the presentation is or has been recorded, and we will be offering it as an on-demand replay version for you on Just Style. You will all receive the link once it's available too. I apologise to anyone whose questions we didn't get to today. We've had rather a lot. And what will happen is I will pass all those directly through to today's speakers, and they can get back to you and answer your questions offline. All the information that you have to reach our speakers today is on your screens as we speak, so do jot it down if you want to get in touch with any of them. And thank you again to our 3 marvellous speakers. It's been a really, really interesting session today, and hope you all have a brilliant day. So thank you very much, and goodbye.